if you want to support the show, any of the shows, either this or whichever show, I'm not on right now because this is just a blanket ad for all of them, and the website, you can go to bewareofspoilers.com. In the description for any of the episodes of Beware of Spoilers, there is the option to donate. If you don't want to donate that way, you can donate directly through the website. We do have that, mwpnews.com. And if you don't want to support that way, then going to mwpnews.com will help out because we have ads there. We don't want to keep it, where there's a lot of ads. There's a few ads. But the point is we want to make it so that way, we can sustain this for the long term. If people donate, we're never going to paywall anything, I don't think, as of right now. But if people, start donating, we'll start doing cooler and cooler stuff. Like donations are how we get to cover stuff like Tribeca and other, film festivals. And, we may be able to bring on more people to help out. So if you want to help out the show and you want more content from us, by all means, even just going and giving us a 5-star rating on Spotify helps out a lot. But that's it. That's the only ad we'll have on the podcast ever. But here's whatever podcast you're going to be listening to. Good morning, and welcome to the Backlog... No, not the Backlog Files. Beware of Spoilers, I am Adam. On this Wednesday morning, we have the penultimate episode of the Acolyte we're going to talk about. I have mixed feelings on this episode, because look, on the one hand, I think this is definitely the weakest episode, especially coming off of where we were last week, where we get this, not backstory for the stranger or the master, or whatever we're going to call Manny Jacinto. Like, not getting that part, but this feels like it was, like, I would have rather that episode 3 was, like, you could have put together this and episode, because I think a lot of what's going on with the Jedi here is not quite as important as they think it is. I mean, we'll see. We'll definitely see as the show goes if it turns out to be important. But I think that they have an overinflated sense of what is important for, for this. And I think by and large, a lot of it doesn't quite fit. I also think that seeing, I said it week 3, Wookiee in Jedi robes in live action looks absolutely ridiculous. I don't know what they were thinking with that. It's an odd choice, and it just kind of looks weird. But that's not the point. The point is, I don't think there's anything really exposed in this episode that's that surprising, to the point where it's like I watched it and then I'm like, do I have to watch episode 3 again to try and figure out what the difference was between what happened? Like, finding out that, like, okay, he lied about the death of, what's it called? He lied about the death of, what's her name? Of Osha and May's mother. Like, okay, that's something, but that could have been a 5-second flashback. We don't need it to be a full episode just to do that. And then the fact that he couldn't save both and chose to save Osha, I don't know. Like, I don't know that needed to be done here. That could have been done in the first episode. Like, not the first episode that they flash back to what's going on this planet. And then the other thing I had with this, the other issue that I really bumped into was, like, as I'm watching it, like, they're on this planet and they're looking at it, they're like, well, there's got to be a variance here. A vergence, not a variance. They're not trying to build a pool in their backyard. There's got to be a vergence here. And a vergence is a mass in the Force that can allow it to create life. The Force can create life then. It's like, okay, cool. And this is not the first time we've heard... It's the first time we've heard it named, I think, but it's not the first time we've dealt with something like this. Like the cave on Dagobah is definitely one of these. There's... If I remember my expanded universe post-Disney acquisition correctly, there's one on Jakku as well. There's one, because that's how they hid Rey, there was a Virgins there, and it was designed to keep the Empire from being able to find her. I guess theoretically you would say that there's one on Coruscant in the Shrine in the Depths. I guess might count, but maybe not. And I guess the insinuation here is that there's one on Tatooine as well. Because the Virgins exist on this planet, and the proof of the Virgins is Osha and May, who were created by manipulating said Virgins and creating life. And there was a line here that made me go like, oh, are they trying? Because look, I got shit for this 5 years ago, saying that, Rey and Kylo Ren, or Rey and Ben, are meant to be, like, they're designed as and the thing is, it eventually came to pass. These two are a dyad in the Force. That's never really explained what a dyad in the Force is, but we just know that they are a dyad in the Force. One good, one, dark, and that's something that the Force creates, I guess. Like, I don't recall them ever fundamentally explaining what a dyad is, but I know Force dyad is definitely a term that exists, and it was... I don't think it's even in the movie for Rise of Skywalker. I think it's just in the novelization. Regardless, the point is, you have this idea. I think that what this is trying to do, what this show is trying to do, is not only, one, explore why it is that the Jedi fall apart, which it is. Again, we've talked about that at length, about how this is the beginning of the dogmatic version of the Jedi teachings, and this is the beginning of the exploration of what the Jedi are, why the Jedi become so orthodox in their religious views. All of that said, this is, I think, them trying to marry the Force Immaculate Conception and the Force dyad into one similar concept. And I think the way that's going to come to pass is, I think we're going to end up with Anakin is special because he's, again, we deal with, a lot of, Christian imagery here where, the Christian God's a threefold God. I think what they're going to say is Anakin is both parts of the dyad in one. Rather than creating, like, if you look, it's like May and Osha, you have a good and a bad. Kylo Ren and Rey, you have a good and a bad. Anakin and Vader are the two in one. So I think what they're going to say is Anakin is quote-unquote the chosen one who's going to bring balance to the Force because he is a Force dyad born out of a virgin. And yes, let me cut this off right now because I know, now that there are comments on Spotify, I know someone's going to bitch at me about this. I know that Rey and Kylo Ren are 10 years apart. But we're not talking about human births, we're talking about the Force doing Force things. I think that this is something that does it. And the thing is, too, the fact that Rey is descended from Palpatine and Kylo Ren is descended from Leia Skywalker, who's a descendant of Darth Vader, creates a weird situation here. It does muddy the waters quite a bit. The point is, if this is the case, and what we're looking at here is the marrying of the Force dyad to the Immaculate Conception, I think that's an interesting approach. I think it's kind of, again, us continuing this thing where we are creating an entire show just designed to, just designed to explain away some of the less thought out aspects of the sequel trilogy, which, like, look, I know we shit on the sequel trilogy for this, but we also had entire TV shows designed to explain away some of the things that didn't make sense about the prequels, too, so it's not like this is something that's, not great. And then it's like, Rogue One is a 2-hour-long movie designed to explain away one line of dialogue that makes very little sense. And either way, it's like, I don't think anyone really questioned it, like, because it's just designed to do the, the point where, like, we intercepted no transmissions. That was the quote from the captain of the from the captain of Leia's ship. And then when they're in the boardroom scene and he's talking to the guy, and the guy says, yeah, your ancient magic hasn't been able to conjure up the stolen data tapes. And it's like, oh, well, how could you transmit data tapes? It's like, yes, let's do a 2-hour-long movie just to fix that incontinuity. I don't think it's necessary. But yeah, a lot of Star Wars is about retconning the past, and I think that's kind of what this is. That said, I think this episode is kind of weak. And let's talk about the Legacy Run reference, which was something that, like, I think this might be, and I'm probably wrong on this, the first, like, overt reference to something that happened in a book. Like, and not broadly them referencing, like, some other aspect of the lore, or like, oh, there was a war between the Jedi and the Sith, oh, there was a war between the Jedi and the Mandalorians, or, like, things like that. I think this is a, this is the first overt reference to a specific event in one of these conflicts, because the Legacy Run disaster is ostensibly the Nile coming out and being like, we are here, we're here to fuck you up, leave us alone, and we won't fuck you up further. Like, the Legacy Run disaster is them blowing up the ship called Legacy Run, and while it's in hyperspace, so the parts of the ship come out of hyperspace in seemingly random places. And because it's coming out in seemingly random places, it does... they could use that for ransom, because they know where the part's coming out, and they could be like, oh, by the way, this is where the next one's coming out. Pay us, and we'll tell you where and when. Like, it's one of those things that it hit my ear a little wrong, because when Indara, I think it is who says it, says like this, she says to her Padawan, who is the guy who drinks the poison, when... I don't know. And when we'll get to that in a minute. When we get to when they're talking about that, she says like, oh, this planet was deemed uninhabitable about 100 years ago after a hyperspace disaster. Which, like, number one, calling it a hyperspace disaster feels weird. I think the only reason that they call it that is because they say the Legacy Run incident. That becomes a thing where it's like, I don't know what that is. That means nothing to me. Arguably, a hyperspace disaster means just as little, because I don't know what a hyperspace disaster is, like, if I'm someone who hasn't read the books. But whatever it is, what it is, it's at least evocative. The Legacy Run incident just tells you, oh, was that a ship? What happened here? You don't know what that involved. And considering the only other run that we can really think of in Star Wars is the Kessel Run, I feel like all that's going to do is just muddy the waters even further. So, here's the issue. Like, it doesn't... This is specifically... And I've had issues with the dialogue on this show before, where things feel like it's written more for an audience more than the other Star Wars shows on Disney Plus. Namely, I don't mean like written for an audience like, oh, they're trying to pander to someone. I mean like it's written with the intent that people are going to watch it, which sounds weird considering it's a TV show, but you get what I mean, where it's like this feels like anachronistic dialogue that makes sense. It doesn't make sense in universe, because like this is the example here. Well, I mean, the example came up with last night, I'm not going to say, because the example came up with last night is a little recent and a little insensitive. But, like, looking at the, like, the Hindenburg, I would say the majority of people know the Hindenburg as a disaster. They may not know the specifics, but they know the Hindenburg was a disaster. So if you say to someone, oh, it's like the Hindenburg, people know that's just a disaster. They don't know, they may not know it was a Zeppelin that exploded, they may not, like, they just know that it was something bad that happened. The difference is, Legacy Run is the inciting incident for a war that has galactic implications for a long time. Because this is the first time that the Nihil come out, and this is the thing that's the precursor to the Nameless, the Blight, the Stormwall, and it's only 100 years. We're not dealing with, like, these vast timelines where it's like, oh my god, this was 10,000 years ago, who knew what could happen? It's like, no, this is something that's relatively recent. This is something that was relatively recent, and, you know, it's not like it was a one-off disaster. This was, like, I think the more clear analogy, and I'm going to hate saying this out loud, it'd be like referring to 9/11 in a weird way 100 years from now. Like, it's like, oh, this is, you know, that terrorist attack. Like, no, it's like September 11th is unnamed. Like, 9/11 is unnamed. We know what that refers to. Even people who weren't born when 9/11 happened know what 9/11 was. Like, my cousins are in their early 20s. They were born after 9/11. They know what 9/11 was. Granted, they're also from the New York metro area, but still, especially a Jedi referring to other Jedi, they would not be like a hyperspace disaster that happened 100 years ago. They'd be like, this is the Legacy Run incident rendered this planet uninhabitable. That would have been the dialogue. Or the conflict with the Nihil would have deemed this planet uninhabitable. Like, that's all you got to say, and that would have gotten the same amount of information conveyed and all of that. I just feel like the hyperspace disaster doesn't quite do justice to what we're dealing with, and it's kind of a weird thing. Although there is a case to be made that this is the Jedi starting to be dismissive, and like, look, we handled that. It's in the past. You know, oh, it's just a hyperspace disaster. It's them removing themselves from it. And that was the other thing, like, why does Soul have this connection with Osha? Like, I would have liked to have had that explored. If you're going to do this episode, give us additional time with, you know, with Osha and Soul, so that way they can establish this connection the two of them have. Because it seems like all it is that's the connection is like, well, she really wants to be a Jedi. Like, and to that end, we have to, you know, kill this entire coven. Like, because, like, that's the thing, is that it's like, I get, like, I forgot his name, I'm going to call him Master Beard, who is in the, what's it called, in the second episode, who May kills. By getting him to drink the poison willingly. Like, I don't think there's anything that happens in that episode that is like, well, killing myself is preferable to whatever could come next. Because, like, he's already a Jedi Master at this point. He's not a Jedi Knight anymore. So, like, a lot happened in, like, 10 years. Where it's like, because he's a Padawan when he first meets Osha and May. Let's say 15 years. I think they're like early 20s, what they're supposed to be now. But like, a lot happened in that time where he's already promoted to a Jedi Master. It's a weird situation where it's like, why would him being present when Soul killed the Night Sister woman who is, I don't remember her name, the Night Sister woman who's running the coven, who is May and Osha's mother. Like, why would that be the thing that it's like, I will expose, like, that is not a big enough reveal for why this man would be like, well, I might as well drink the poison and just be done with this. It's like, if that came out to the council, I don't think that would change things. Like, it's an odd choice. Like, I don't think they handled that well enough, if I'm being honest. Because I don't think that's enough of a reason for this character to have killed himself. But yeah, I mean, unless they're saying that, like, all that happened was because he wanted to go home, and it's like, and that's what they covered up, and, like, I guess that's more of the cover-up, but even then, it's like, I don't know, like, I don't think that's really, you know, I'd be like, okay, so so you murdered Indara, like, and you came here to kill me, and now you're trying to blackmail me into doing this. Like, the issue is, it's like, had she been successful with the other two, and then went to him last, he'd be like, all right, do it. Like, who's gonna corroborate your story, Miss Killer of 3 of the witnesses? Like, the other 3 witnesses you killed. So, like, it's a weird thing. It's a very weird thing. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know. It is what it is. We'll wrap up there for today. We'll be back tomorrow. Tomorrow is Thursday. Tomorrow we will be doing, what was that show? WandaVision. On 30-minute reviews. But over here, we're going to be doing My Adventures with Superman. And, yeah, we have some cool stuff coming up in the near future. So until then, have a great rest of your week.